So, welcome back to another episode. Shirley, hello.
Hi, how are you?
All right? It's like I haven't seen you for, it's been a week.
Yes, a week.
A week. Anything exciting happen in your week?
No.
No.
Not really.
It's like that at the moment.
It does feel like that.
Still working with the Marines?
No, not at the moment.
It's quite sad. Yeah, that sounded like a good project, and the little video I saw looked like fun as well.
Yeah, it was.
Good. Right, so I've had some exciting stuff going on, and so last week, well, actually 2 weeks ago. That's a lie. 2 weeks ago, I played my best round of golf ever.
Wow.
Okay, don't all switch off now, everybody. There's a reason that I'm bringing this up. But one of the things that I've been really struggling with is my kind of chipping. So if I miss a green and I'm 20, 30 yards from the green, just, I get really tense and I get really nervous, and I end up sort of doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And so I did what everybody else does in these situations, and I went to YouTube and I started Googling, chipping lessons, and I came across a video that actually really, really did help me. And there were two videos that I saw. And what I wanted to talk about today was kind of what I pulled out of that in terms of practice and the work that business owners are putting in that no one sees. Mm-hmm. So last week we talked about kind of that principle of success and what success means to you. And I think there's a lot to be said for being proud of the stuff that happens under the table, if you like, the swan's legs that no one sees. So the first video I saw was, without wanting to get too technical, this particular shot, the guy doing it, I said one thing that really, really kind of resonated with me, which was, imagine you're throwing the ball. How would you throw the ball? Now, I'm really good at throwing the ball, really good. And I say that without any arrogance at all. I remember Christmas dinner about 5 years ago with my now nephew, I guess, through marriage, who was yakking away, and he was half asleep and he was sort of dozing off with his mouth open. And from about 15 foot, I screwed up a piece of silver foil, I think it was, and just pinged it straight into his mouth. And he kind of woke up and went, oh no, it was a Malteser.
God, I'm surprised you didn't choke him.
And he was just like, yeah, I thought about that afterwards, boys and consequences. But he was like, oh my God, do that again. So I did it again. And we ended up with this sort of game, across the room of, I was finding Maltesers for weeks, but kind of pinging, and I just don't miss. And when I heard this kind of tip, imagine you're throwing the ball, wow, what a difference it made. And it made me realise that actually we all have skills. We don't always bring them with us into our new environments. So because of my tennis background, I know how to throw. Okay, but I never once thought about using that and applying it in a golf scenario, or in that particular golf scenario. So I just thought that was quite interesting. What skills do we have that we're not always bringing with us into, into our current environment? And then the other video that I saw, which I think is possibly where I wanted to go a little bit deeper, is the first thing this guy did with the video, with the golf ball around the green, is he took the edge of the golf club and he tapped the ball into the ground. And then he looked at the camera and he said, this is to make the practice a bit harder. And I was like, hang on a minute, I think I know where you're going here. So he then proceeds to show some technique and hit the ball. And then he drops it somewhere else and he does it again. And he proceeds to show this technique from different places around the green. So he never hits two shots the same. From the same place, in the same way, from the same lie, to the same flag. So he's got different target. He's coming from a different place, in a different situation, every single time. He's made it hard for himself. And he said something along the lines of, if you can make your practice harder than the real thing, then when it comes to the real thing, well, the game's easy. And it took me back again to my tennis days, where I would say to kids, right, what we're going to do is, get these lines out and we're going to make the baseline shorter. Because if you can keep it in the court, then when you've got a full length court, the game's really easy. Or you can only hit into half the court, or we're going to double the height of the net. And if you can still get it over the net and in the court, well, that's really hard. But when it comes to playing, it's going to be really easy, and you've now got a margin for error, stuff like that. And my question to you is, I think, is with the work that you're doing with, on the accountability side, and I know for me with my clients as well, and the conversations you're having, how can we use this principle of making practice, whatever that is in your business, harder, so that when you have to do it for real, it's easy? And I'll give you one example. I'll give you one because it's quite a tricky one.
It is a tricky one.
How can we make this relevant? But the one example I came across is I do my weekly email every week without fail, pretty much. But could I start writing that email and give myself a time limit when I don't normally have one? Could I start writing about topics I'm less comfortable with? Could I handwrite it to see what comes out in a different way? Does that make sense? So then when I get back into my rhythm of doing it weekly, maybe that'll make that easier, because sometimes I do get stuck for topics and occasionally and think, well, what am I going to write about, that sort of stuff. So I don't know, that was kind of a loose example, but I was just curious as to whether you had any ideas in terms of, especially with some of the businesses you work with that are retail based and e-commerce based, what can they be doing that makes it, and it sounds really counterintuitive, but actually makes the process a little bit harder when they're trying things, when they're testing stuff. So when it actually hits the real world, it's a little smoother. Any thoughts?
The thing that always strikes me in terms of retail is e-commerce. That's a big part of my background. And when you're doing your website and you're listing your products, it's easy to miss things because you know your products inside out. You know what you think you are saying in the descriptions or in the way that the navigation works on your website. But sometimes that's in your head, and our brain makes a jump between what is and what you think it is, to the point where we actually miss a step out in the process that people have to go through. Not so much that they can't buy stuff, but in a way that makes them hesitate or stumble, or they can't find something. So using your example of how do you make it more difficult, what if you couldn't see? How would somebody navigate your website then? What if you couldn't hear? Does that impact, if you, for example, if you can't hear, then subtitles are really important. If you've got product videos, have you got subtitles on your website? Product videos. A lot of people don't. But that's not quite making it difficult, but it's trying to see it from other customers' viewpoint, not just yours. Because I certainly found it's so easy because your products inside out. For example, when I was doing it, is people could personalize their items. And there's a lot of choice. What font do you want? What color crystal do you want? Do you want it on the front, the back, the side? There's all these things. It's obvious to me how to step through those and how to choose. But people get overwhelmed with choice. So what if you could only make 2 choices? And when on my original website, I actually had it on Wix, I think. And the way that the back end of Wix works is you can only have 2 filters. So I had to really think about how to display personalization, because I could only show size and color, or I could only show font and color, for example. It really drives you to think hard about A, what's important, and B, how you display stuff on the website. But what if people can't see? Are there explainer videos on your website? Is it easy for people to navigate through the website? How many clicks have you got? We all know that the more clicks you've got, the greater drop-off you've got. What happens when you get to checkout? Is it obvious? If they need to leave you a message, can they?
So actually what you're talking about, linking it back to the golf video that I watched, that there's an element there of, I knew that stuff. So I think there's both those videos, all of it links together. I knew that stuff about making practice harder. I used to make my kids do it. All right? Not just my kids, any kids. Well, I got one child, but you know what I mean? They were all my kids. But I would make them all. Practice was always really, really difficult. And it links into the other video where that transition of skill, I've kind of made that mistake myself, haven't I? That even though I knew that making practice was difficult, I've not brought it into this business, I suppose. So it was really about thinking of ways to, and I think you've identified it here, it was about thinking of ways to get people to question the way they run their business from a different perspective.
Yeah.
From the perspective of somebody who isn't them. From the perspective of somebody coming into the business from new. So I suppose a great example might be onboarding a new employee, you know, bringing on a new team member. We make assumptions about what they should be able to do.
Yeah.
But it's really hard for them because they don't have all that innate knowledge and experience and understand how your business works.
Even down to where do you find something in the file structure?
Yeah.
You know, I know, Hannah knows. But if we had a new person join us, how would they know?
I don't know.
Exactly.
I've got to be honest, I don't know. And I think that's what it's about, is it's taking time to actually address all the things that we take for granted and asking yourself, if I were going to come and see this for the first time, would it make sense? Would it be easy? And I guess it's about also not being afraid of when things are difficult. And maybe that's the bit that I'm missing. I'm kind of thinking this through as we're recording and talking about it. Do we shortcut stuff too much because we're afraid of how difficult it might be?
I don't think it's because we're afraid of how difficult it might be. I think it's because we have some prior knowledge. So we shortcut stuff because that's how your brain works. But we forget that other people might not have that knowledge, whether it's a customer or a new staff member. And the process falls down at that point because they don't have that piece of knowledge. So there's a gap for them and they get stuck. If it's a customer, they might just not buy from you because there's a gap and they can't fill that gap. They don't know how to fill that gap. And unless even if you've got really good FAQs or a knowledge center on your website, you're making them jump through another hoop to find out information that to them should be obvious. Just because we haven't thought about it from a place of a new person.
So how do we, you know, for people listening to this, right? And I'm thinking about this in my own business as well now. Okay. So how do we get to a point where we are looking at the way that we do things and not make it harder, but look for opportunities to almost make it, look for points of failure, I guess. Look for things that might go wrong and find ways of addressing those so that when people who are our customers come across those points, come across those moments, if you like, rather than them seeing the things that could go wrong, we've already found them. We've already found the points of failure. There are opportunities, you know, take opportunities to practice for another word. Put ourselves through it as if our customers were going through it, identify the problems, fix them as best as we can, and then so that we're making it easy for our customer. So I guess the difference between me going out and playing golf and making my practice difficult so that when I play, it's easy, the difference with in our businesses is that it's our job to go out and test and put under pressure the interactions that our customers have with our business, so that when our customers go out and play, when they're interacting, we're making it easy for them.
The number one thing that I think businesses can do is get somebody who doesn't work for the business to try their website, order their product, get them to test it, and really importantly, be really, really open to the feedback that they give you and not dismiss it. Because the number of businesses that I see who have somebody external, whether it's family and friends, or they have some friendly customers or prospective customers who will test it and give them some feedback. That button doesn't work on your website. I don't know where to find this information. And instead of going, thank you, let me fix that, they get defensive and shut down and start saying, well, if only you looked, it would be obvious. But it's not obvious. And they're raising it because it's not obvious. And instead of trying to make it easy for them and fixing that, even if you don't think it's obvious, even if you don't think it's necessary, it's something that they as a prospective customer have raised. If you get defensive, you're not making it easy for them. You're saying, no, it's my way or no way. And I know, therefore, we're going to do it this way. That's making it hard. And ultimately, that will cost you sales.
So you're talking about mystery shopping?
To an extent, yeah.
It's funny that, because many years ago, we've lost 2 years, I appreciate that. So kind of remembering where we are is quite difficult. But we haven't lost 2 years. I've gained a lot in the last 2 years, in fairness. But so I'm thinking probably 5 years ago now, I had a presentation to do at a local networking group. So I spent a little bit of money getting a VA to, this is before I'd met Hannah and before I'd met you, to do some mystery shopping on the other businesses in the networking group. And then I stood up, big screen, did a little presentation that basically said, so rather than talking about my business today, I'm going to talk about your businesses today. And what I've done is spend a little bit of money and done a little mystery shop on everybody in the room. And immediately everybody sort of sat back and folded their arms like this in this kind of, defensive posture, which to me says straight away, they know it's going to be bad. Otherwise they'd be kind of eager and ready for the feedback. So, and I went through the stuff, and basically the girl who did it for me, she had to go through the website. If there was a phone number to ring and place an inquiry for that business, if there was a contact form to fill out the contact form on the website. And I can't remember the stats, but I think there was something like 18 businesses that we communicated with, and only 2 of the businesses that she phoned, she managed to talk to. 2 out of 18. And of the contact forms that she filled out, which I think was 7, she got no replies. So they're probably still floating around in the ether somewhere. Yeah. And I explained this, and they were like, well, who? Because it wasn't me. And so I sort of unblanked the screen bit that I'd covered and showed the business name and the call time and date and and all the rest of it. And even a year later, I remember somebody saying to me, do you remember that survey you did? Well, it's still not possible because I've checked the logs and my assistant would have, and it was just all defensive, all resistant, rather than going, oh, wow, this is valuable. Thank you, Ash, because you've spent some money on it when I chose not to. And this is a real opportunity to learn
and to be better.
And somebody's done the practicing for me, and now I can improve on it. Does that make sense? Go and learn from that opportunity. So why do we get resistant and defensive to it?
We see it as criticism.
But it was criticism.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna kind of sugarcoat it any other way. I was pretty.
But we talked about
critical.
this quite a few weeks ago about how people take business feedback personally as a personal reflection on them as opposed to their business. And they are separate things, but especially as small micro or solopreneurs, your personality as a business owner is very tied up in your business, almost always. And therefore it makes it hard to separate criticism of the business or your website or your process with criticism of you. Nobody likes criticism. Very, very, very few people do. In fact, I would go to say nobody likes it. Very few people take it on board and use it in a positive way. And I think that's why. There are some fancier ways of getting this feedback. That's why I chose that one, because it's basically free. Everyone has some friends and family who would be willing to do a bit of mystery shopping on their website. Yeah. It really doesn't need to cost you anything. But if you want to go to the other end of the spectrum, you can get eye movement sensors installed on your website, and a company will analyze where people look on your website, how long they spend there, what route they take down your page, what route they take through your website in terms of clicks, where they get stuck. If you want to do that, and it's not cheap, but you could do it for free in less than a week. Find out where are the sticking points on your website or your process, whether it, if it's calling, emailing, whatever. I guarantee there will be some for every single company. And I'm as an example, I hate picking on people because it's not a criticism, but I remember the very first locker room that Chris and Sarah came to, and we were talking about how to increase their sales. And Hannah and I were flicking through their website on our phones while you guys were talking. And I think it was Hannah said, well, this button doesn't work. And the other one was, you said that one of your main services, I think it was rug cleaning. Where is that on your website? It's not there. And the penny dropped of, no wonder we're not making the sales. It's not on our website. Yeah. It's blindingly obvious, but they're so ingrained in their business, what they do, they know it inside out, that they've missed the absolute obvious. So easy to fix. And I think they went away and fixed it that day, didn't they?
Yeah, because they're good like that.
Yeah, but that's the point, is take that information and learn from it, do better, make it easy for your customer, your sales will go up. Ignore it, be defensive and say it couldn't possibly happen, like some of the people in your example, and you'll be in the same position in a year's time.
Yeah, and I suspect with some of those businesses, if we were to mystery shop them again, nothing would have changed.
No, probably not.
Nothing would have changed. Interesting stuff, really interesting. So, summarise for me, as we do every week, what have we covered today?
I think practice, make it easy for your customers in whatever way that takes. And there are lots of different ways. And, that may be something that comes up in a future locker room. We can sit and brainstorm ideas, or in accountability course, how can you make it easy for your customer? How can we practice that so that when a real customer comes along, that it's as easy as possible? And the other thing I would say is be open to feedback. It's not criticism. It is there to help your business or you be better. And who doesn't want to be better?
Yes, and I think that's a really good point, because being better means that you're on the path to winning. And as we talked about before, not necessarily beating other people, but winning for yourself. And that's the reason I love playing golf, is the only person I'm playing is me. And if I hit the ball into the woods and I walk up to it, there's no point being angry, because I'm the one who hit it there, not my opponent. And I think the same is true for life, and it's very much true for business, that when we make mistakes in our business, it's our fault.
Yep.
So you have to learn how to deal with it and accept help if that's what's required, but accept the ball as it lies, accept the situation as it is, and rather than rant and rave about it, deal with it. And if you can kind of preempt what those situations might be and practice those situations, when they happen, you're going to find dealing with that situation much, much, much easier. And it's why I go out and practice playing left-handed from next to a tree. We have to find the equivalent in business. Practice what happens when you don't answer the phone. Practice what you're going to do if your website crashes.
Or you've staff off sick.
Or you've got staff off sick. Yeah, exactly.
But for me, there isn't an end point, whether it's you personally or your business. It isn't about when you get to the winning post with the ribbon and you cross it, that's it, you're done. There isn't that metaphorical finish line. It is just, how do you be better? How do you do better this year, next year, the year after? And you keep going.
Yeah. Today, tomorrow, next week.
And to go back to your golf analogy, a famous quote is, "You will miss 100% of the balls you don't hit."
Yeah.
Or you don't attempt to hit.
You don't attempt to hit. Yeah.
And we should be out there as businesses attempting to hit all the balls all the time.
All the time.
Doesn't mean that you'll get them all, but you'll get more than if you don't try.
Definitely. I like that. Good to catch up with you,
Absolutely.
as always.
See you next week.
Next week. Amazing.